The champagne sparkled like liquid gold beneath the heavy chandeliers of the French villa. Outside, the gardens hummed with summer insects, but inside the grand hall, silence reigned. All eyes were on Edward Langston, billionaire, real estate tycoon, and now, for the second time, a groom. He stood tall at the head table, glass raised. His black suit shimmered subtly under the candlelight, perfectly tailored. A practiced smile played on his lips. To freedom, Edward announced, his voice deep, rehearsed. Laughter rippled through the wedding guests. He let the sound swell, before raising his hand theatrically for silence. Behind him, Camilla shifted slightly, the delicate lace of her gown creasing at her tense fingers. She smiled, but her knuckles were white. Edward continued. Some men escape war. Others, prison. But today, I stand before you as a man who escaped something far deadlier. He paused, allowing his gaze to sweep the crowd. Marriage to the wrong woman. Laughter again, louder, this time more uneasy. His bride forced a brittle smile. If this story resonated with you, subscribe to the channel and like, spread the word, and tell us where you're watching from. Years wasted in shadows, Edward said, eyes narrowing almost imperceptibly. Chained to guilt, burdened by lies, by manipulation, but no more. At that, the room grew quieter. Even the waiters, moving elegantly between tables, slowed. Camilla's throat bobbed as she swallowed. She stared at Edward's back, unable to predict the next twist in his cruel monologue. And now, I toast my freedom, my future, and the woman who showed me life isn't meant to be endured. He turned slightly, raising his glass toward Camilla. To Camilla, my salvation. For a moment, her eyes flickered with something not entirely joyful. Glasses clinked hesitantly. Some guests glanced toward the grand doors, as if expecting someone, or fearing they might arrive. Edward noticed. He always noticed. His eyes flicked briefly toward those doors too, but he masked it with a smile. He cleared his throat, stepping down from the dais. The band resumed softly behind him, violins humming like broken apologies. Camilla leaned close. As Edward sat beside her, "Why did you say those things about Lily?" she whispered, her voice shaking. Edward took a slow sip from his glass, his tone ice. "Because she deserves worse." Camilla said nothing. Her hand, inches from his, stayed, curled in her lap, but Edward's posture betrayed something. His shoulders were too rigid, his smile too rehearsed, and in the distance, far from the laughter and the music, the faint hum of a car engine cut through the night. A black limo, gliding silently through the villa's iron gates. Edward's laughter, just moments ago, loud and cruel, now echoed hollow in his own ears. Something was coming. He felt it. But for now, he clinked glasses and played the role of the victorious groom, unwilling to admit that his carefully constructed freedom might already be crumbling. Not yet. Not tonight. He laughed again. And this time, no one laughed with him. Rain drummed softly against the black-tinted windows of the limousine, blurring the world outside into streaks of gray and gold. The vehicle glided soundlessly along the winding road, cutting through the French hills toward the villa that stood like a fortress beyond the mist. Inside, Lily sat perfectly still. She wore no makeup, no jewelry. A simple black dress draped her slender frame, as if mourning something long buried. Her dark hair was tied back, sharp against the pale skin of her face. But her expression wasn't grief. It was resolve. Beside her, four small bodies shifted in sleep. Her children, 4 toddlers, 2 boys and 2 girls, all barely past their second birthdays, huddled close together, their heads resting against each other like delicate glass figures in a moving case. Each child clutched a small white gift box wrapped in silver ribbon, their fingers reflexively tight even in sleep. She reached out silently, brushing a strand of damp hair from her eldest daughter's forehead. The little girl stirred but did not wake. "Not yet," Lily whispered, her voice barely audible. The driver kept his eyes forward but heard her. The road curved, the villa now visible in the distance. Lights ablaze, music faint in the air even. From here, somewhere inside that stone palace, Edward was laughing, toasting, Camilla by his side. Lily closed her eyes. She remembered the last time she saw Edward's face, cold, superior, sneering as he stood in the courtroom. His words then had cut deeper than any lawyer's argument. "You think children will chain me to you, Lily? You're not the first woman to try." He'd said it in front of strangers, judges, reporters, friends, and Camila, she'd watched from the back of the courtroom, eyes lowered, silent. Lily had said nothing in response then, just as she said nothing now. Her silence had once been survival. Tonight, it was strategy. The villa loomed closer. One of the boys stirred awake. He blinked, confused, before lifting his head sleepily. His eyes, Edward's eyes, met Lily's. "Mommy, where Daddy?" he mumbled, clutching his box tighter. Lily placed a gentle finger to his lips. "Chill, we're almost there." He nodded drowsily and leaned against her, soothed not by her words but by the strange, steady calm in her tone. The driver risked a glance in the mirror. He wanted to ask, was this revenge? Justice? Or something darker? But he didn't speak. Outside, the rain thickened, the droplets running like tears down the glass. That Lily's fingers tightened around her handbag. Inside it, folded neatly, lay 4 documents. 4 truths. Papers Edward believed buried. Papers Camila never even knew existed. Each labeled with one name. Each carrying his. The road straightened. The villa's gates rose ahead. Lily exhaled slowly. She adjusted the children's seatbelts one by one, her movements efficient, rehearsed. The smallest girl stirred, murmuring, "Are we gonna see Daddy?" Lily paused, staring at her daughter's face for a long moment. Finally, she nodded. "Yes, sweetheart, you are." As the car slowed before the looming iron gates, Lily glanced at her watch. 10:43 p.m. Behind those gates, Edward's wedding toast was likely still echoing. Freedom, he had called it. Freedom from her, from them. The gates creaked open. The driver's hands trembled slightly as he guided the limo through. Lily looked forward, her silence unbroken, her war about to begin. And outside, the villa doors shuddered beneath the weight of a storm far colder than rain. The rain outside faded into white noise as Lily's thoughts drifted backward, past the endless winding road and past the silent children at her side. In her mind, she stood in a memory, one she had revisited too many times. Camila's smile. Not the stiff, strained one Lily had seen at the courthouse or glimpsed in photographs from the villa. No, she remembered the old smile. The one that came with shared secrets whispered under childhood bedsheets. Sleepovers. College lectures skipped. Coffee dates where time disappeared. Her best friend. Lily had never imagined that word would curdle in her throat. The memory sharpened. She remembered when things shifted, not suddenly, but like a slow poison. The spa invitations stopped. Lunch. Plans were always rescheduled. Camila's texts became brief. Cold. Busy with work, Camila had said. Overwhelmed. But Lily knew the truth long before she accepted it. It was the silence in Camila's voice. The hesitation after every hello. It was the guilt. Lily could trace the moment now. The night she saw Edward's car outside Camila's apartment. It wasn't a guess. It wasn't a rumor. It was fact. She remembered standing under the streetlight, rain soaking her hair, as she watched shadows move behind Camila's window. She stood there for almost half an hour. She never knocked. Not that night. Not after. She let them believe she didn't know. Perhaps, she told herself, she didn't want to know. What hurt more, Edward's betrayal or Camila's? Lily couldn't decide. In the days that followed, she watched mutual friends drift away. Couples who once shared dinner tables now sent polite, neutral messages. She was pitted in private but excluded in public. Edward's narrative spread faster than the truth ever could. She tried to trap him. She refused to let go. She faked the pregnancies. Lily said nothing. Not to anyone. Not even to Camila. She waited. The limo curved along the wet path. Closer now. She wondered what Camila looked like tonight. She imagined the dress. The flowers. The hair pinned perfectly, makeup masking whatever cracks had formed. Did Camila think of her? Or had she rewritten the story in her own mind? The way people often do to survive their own betrayals? Lily opened her eyes, pulled back into the present as her daughter stirred beside her. The black boxes in the children's laps caught her attention. 4 boxes. 4 small weights that carried more than gifts. She thought of Camila's hands, delicate, careful, once used to braid Lily's hair before parties, once used to clasp Lily's own hands and whispered promises of friendship forever. Now, those same hands wore Edward's wedding ring. Lily inhaled, steadying herself. The confrontation wasn't feared that it was overdue. Tonight, the woman she once trusted above all wasn't her friend. She was something worse. The limo slowed. Lily tightened her grip on the handbag beside her, its contents heavier than gold. The villas. Lights glimmered ahead. Soon, very soon, the low hum of the limousine's engine was broken by a burst of sound. And so to freedom. To Camila, my salvation. Lily's body went rigid. From the dashboard radio, Edward's voice rang out, smug, theatrical, dripping with a cruelty only she could recognize. Somewhere in the villa ahead, he stood laughing, glass in hand, pretending he was free, and now his voice filled the car like a ghost. The children stirred. First one, then all four. Their small heads lifted sleepily, confusion giving way to excitement as they recognized the familiar voice. Daddy? Her eldest whispered, blinking at the sound. Then the youngest boy gasped, shaking off sleep, clapping his tiny hands. Daddy! Daddy! Within seconds, the car was filled with the cries of four toddlers, not frightened, but joyful. Daddy! Where's Daddy? Daddy's talking. Lily swallowed hard, her throat suddenly dry. She leaned forward, pressing her trembling fingers against the speaker as if she could smother the sound itself. But Edward kept speaking, laughing, boasting about the life he'd rebuilt, the life she wasn't meant to hear about. Her daughter tugged at her sleeve. Mommy, Daddy's on the radio. Lily forced herself to speak, her voice soft but firm. Soon, babies. Soon. The children quieted, their excitement fading into puzzled silence. They didn't understand her tone, but they trusted it'd in the driver's seat. Marcus kept his gaze forward, though his knuckles whitened around the steering wheel. He had no idea what he was driving toward or away from. But the woman in the rearview mirror wasn't just a mother. Not tonight. That he flicked his eyes upward briefly, catching Lily's reflection. Her face was unreadable, but her eyes burned cold. Was this revenge? Or something else? He didn't know. He wasn't sure he wanted to. Behind him, Edward's voice crackled from the radio one last time. To new beginnings. Lily reached forward and turned the radio off. Silence fell like stone. Is Daddy waiting for us? Her smallest daughter asked softly. Lily looked down at her, a fragile, trusting face staring up at her like she held the answers to every question. She hesitated, then nodded. Yes, he's waiting. The children settled, curling back against each other. Their small breaths filled the space where Edward's voice had been moments before. Outside, the villa grew larger, brighter, closer. Lily leaned her head back against the seat, eyes closing just for a moment. Not to rest, but to contain the storm inside her. Soon, she whispered again. But this time it wasn't to the children. It was to herself. The driver pressed gently on the brakes as the front gates came into view, their iron bars looming. Under the flickering lanterns, inside the limo, the children slept once more. Lily did not, and neither did the man she was coming for. Camila stood alone in the bridal chamber, her back pressed against the cool marble wall she had slipped out of the reception hours ago, leaving behind the clinking glasses, rehearsed smiles, and Edward's voice echoing through the stone halls. Her wedding gown felt heavier now, like a costume she wasn't allowed to remove. The silk, the lace, the pearls, beautiful, expensive, suffocating. She pressed a hand to her chest, forcing herself to breathe. This was everything she had wanted, wasn't it? The diamond ring on her finger sparkled under the chandelier's light. It looked real. It felt foreign. Her mind wandered back to the night Edward proposed, not on bended knee, not with flowers, but in his office after midnight. She'd been crying then, over Lily, over the guilt. Edward had pulled her close, wiping her tears not with tenderness, but efficiency. Be with me, he'd said. Forget her. She betrayed us both. Camila hadn't questioned the logic. It was easier not to. She remembered nodding, too quickly. Now, standing here, she wondered, had that been a proposal? Or a transaction? She flinched as the door opened. Edward stepped inside. That he didn't look at her immediately. He didn't ask where she had been. He simply removed his cufflinks, placing them methodically on the dresser. I was tired, Camila said softly. You disappeared from our reception. His tone wasn't angry. It was indifferent. Camila felt her throat tighten. I didn't want to answer questions. Edward finally looked at her. His gaze was clinical. Measuring. They're not questions. They're congratulations. She hesitated. Are they? Silenced, he turned away, removing his jacket, eye in the mirror's reflection. Camila saw herself beside him, not as a bride, but as something else entirely. A shadow. A replacement. Did you love her? The words escaped her before she could stop. Them. Edward paused, then shrugged. I married you. Camila's heart cracked, but she kept her voice steady. That's not the same thing. He said nothing. The room felt colder. Camila wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly aware that, despite the grand villa, the gowns, the jewels, she was trapped, a wife in name, but a prisoner in truth. She remembered the warnings. Subtle ones. Friends who had distanced themselves. Lily's silence. Not accusations, not confrontations. Just silence. And that silence had said everything. She could almost hear Lily's voice in her mind. You think you won. You didn't. Her eyes stung. Edward, she whispered. What are we doing? He glanced at her, confused. Building a future. But his voice lacked conviction. Outside, the villa's music swelled again as the guests resumed their celebrations. Camila looked toward the window. Beyond the walls, somewhere, there was freedom. Honesty. Maybe even forgiveness. But not here. Not tonight. She felt the weight of the ring on her hand and understood, finally, that she hadn't married love. She had married her own betrayal. That a sound outside broke her thoughts. A car engine. Unfamiliar. Drawing closer. She turned toward the window, frowning. Edward noticed but said nothing. I in the distance. Unseen, a black limousine rolled through the villa's gates, and Camila, though she didn't yet know why, felt a chill run down her spine. The gates groaned as they swung open. A cold breeze cut through the villa's courtyard, scattering rose petals left from the ceremony. Conversation slowed. Laughter thinned. A low murmur rippled through the crowd as a black limousine rolled silently onto the cobblestones. Its windows were so deeply tinted that the faces inside remained hidden. The vehicle stopped. Engines idled. Inside the grand hall, Edward felt it. First, a shift, like air thinning in his lungs. He paused mid-conversation, glass in hand, eyes narrowing as the butler leaned discreetly toward him. Sir, an unannounced guest. Edward's jaw tightened. Camila, still pale from their last conversation, watched him carefully but said nothing. Outside, the guests were no longer talking. Some clutched their glasses tighter. Others exchanged uneasy glances. Photographers lowered their cameras instinctively. N01 moved. N01 spoke. They simply watched. The limo door opened. A single black stiletto touched the wet stones. Then Lily stepped out. Not dressed as a vengeful woman. Not glamorous. Not fragile. She wore a plain black dress. Her hair was pinned back neatly. Her face calm. Too calm. Behind her, four small children carefully descended, each gripping their small silver-wrapped boxes. 2 boys. 2 girls. All in matching coats. They stood beside their mother in the rain. The silence of the courtyard deepened. And then, Daddy. For small voices shattered the silence at once. Tiny feet pattered across the stones. Daddy. Daddy, look. Daddy. Daddy. Inside the villa, champagne flutes slipped from trembling fingers. Glass hit marble. Liquid pooled. Edward's world fractured. He stood frozen, unable to process the sound. His name, from voices he recognized, from faces he had denied. Lily remained motionless by the limo, her expression unreadable. She didn't chase her children as they ran forward. She simply stood, letting them speak for her, letting their innocence do what years of silence never could. Camila's knees buckled slightly. She reached for the nearest wall to steady herself, her complexion deathly pale. Her lips formed Lily's name, but no sound escaped. Outside, the children stopped several feet from the villa's doors, confused now. Where was their father? Mommy. The youngest girl whimpered. Glancing back, Lily stepped forward, unhurried, rain soaking her shoulders. Inside, Edward's hands trembled. He whispered without realizing it. No. Camila heard him. No. Edward said again, louder this time, backing away from the doors. But it was too late. The guests were already turning. The whispers had begun. She's here. That's her. And the children. Edward's empire, built on lies, on erasure, cracked in real time. Camila staggered toward him. Edward, tell me those aren't. They're not, he rasped. They can't be. But the panic in his voice betrayed him. Outside, Lily reached the children. She placed a hand gently on each of their shoulders. Then she raised her eyes, not to the guests, not to Camila, only to Edward, and she spoke 3 simple words. We're home now. The children clutched their boxes tighter. The silence wasn't silent anymore. It screamed. Inside the villa, Edward felt the walls close around him, and from her vantage point just beyond the courtyard, Lily watched her husband, or rather, the man who used to be. She had no reason to shout. The truth spoke louder than revenge. She stepped forward once more, and every champagne glass trembled. Edward couldn't move. The children, for small, breathing proofs of his failure, stood just feet away, their innocent cries still echoing off the marble walls. Daddy, they had called. His title, his condemnation, his undoing. He felt his body reject itself. His heartbeat slowed, yet his skin burned. He wanted to step backward, but his legs refused. His brain screamed at him to deny, to refute, to flee. Instead, he stood paralyzed. Camila saw everything. Her vision swam. She swayed, one hand gripping the wall as though the stone could anchor her. But there was no safety here. Not anymore. No. She whispered. Her gaze flicked from Edward to Lily, and then to the children. Each tiny face looked familiar now, not just in the color of their eyes, but in the shape of their father's jawline. His chin, his blood. Edward, Camila choked. Tell me those aren't. He didn't answer. His silence was her answer. Camila crumbled. She sank to her knees on the marble floor, her bridal gown pooling around her like broken lace. Her chest heaved, and the first sob tore from her throat. Sharp, raw, and shattering. Guests stared, unsure whom to pity. No one approached her. Lily stood in the doorway. She hadn't moved from the courtyard. She simply watched. Not victorious, not vengeful. Still, calm. Edward's gaze finally met hers, and then Lily spoke, her voice clear, steady. You left us, Edward. He flinched as though struck. She paused, glancing sideways, her eyes settling on the broken woman in the gown, and her too. The accusation wasn't loud. That it didn't need to be. That Camila's sobs grew louder. Her shoulders shook violently, hands trembling over her face, as if hiding could somehow erase what the world now knew. Her best friend hadn't betrayed her. She had betrayed herself. That Lily's gaze returned to Edward. Her face held no triumph, only truth. You didn't just abandon a wife, she said softly. You abandoned your own blood. The guests shifted, their murmurs swelling. No one looked at Edward with admiration now. Not the investors, not the politicians, not the journalists he once bribed with exclusives. Their stares pierced him, judged him, condemned him. Edward's glass slipped from his hand, shattering at his feet. The children jumped at the sound. One of the little boys reached instinctively for Lily's hand. His small voice cracked. Mommy, why is Daddy scared? Lily bent slowly, wrapping her arm around her son's shoulders. She didn't answer. What answer could there be? Innocence didn't understand cruelty. Edward's chest tightened. The walls spun. He saw everything yet registered nothing. Camila's sobs bled into the silence. Lily straightened and took a single step forward. The final nail. She didn't need lawyers. She didn't need threats. She had the one thing Edward's empire couldn't destroy. Proof. Their children. And as the villa's chandeliers flickered under the weight of a silence deeper than stone, Lily stood, not as the scorned wife, not even as the betrayed friend. She stood as a mother. And Edward Langston, once a king in this palace, realized the truth. He was no longer the one being watched. He was the one being judged. And Lily? She wasn't here for revenge. She was here for justice. With 4 voices who had already spoken it. Rain had blurred the courthouse windows that day too. Lily remembered sitting in the cold wooden chair, hands resting on her rounded stomach, as Edward took the stand with the same confidence he wore at his wedding. I am not the father of those children, he had said flatly. His voice didn't crack. His gaze didn't shift. To the world, he was calm, rational, composed. The courtroom had leaned toward him, physically, emotionally. Even the judge seemed reluctant to meet Lily's eyes. She remembered the murmurs from the gallery. She trapped him. Gold digger. Poor Camila. Her own friend. Camila had testified next. Lily could still hear Camila's voice. I loved her like a sister, But Edward told me the truth. I believe him. Tears had streamed down Camila's cheeks then. Real tears. Lily hadn't believed they were fake, but they were misplaced. That day, Lily had lost everything. Custody rights severed, support denied, paternity declared and proven. Edward's lawyers had celebrated outside the courtroom, their smiles razor-thin. What? No one knew. What Edward believed buried was that one test had been hidden. Suppressed. 3 weeks before the trial, Lily had forced a private clinic to conduct paternity testing on all 4 children. The results had been conclusive. 100%. Edward Langston was the biological father of all 4. She had presented those results to the court, and yet, somehow, they never reached the judge. Lily later learned why. Edward's lead attorney had pocketed them, discredited the clinic, claimed the tests were forged. By the time Lily realized the deception, the ruling had been sealed. Edward's empire had rewritten reality. Camila had stood silent beside him. Lily never cried that day. Instead, she folded the test results and placed them in her handbag, not as evidence, but as a promise. She waited. Years passed. 4 children grew in silence, calling no one daddy. And Lily watched from the shadows as Edward rebuilt his public life, painting himself the wronged man, the millionaire betrayed by a woman who tried to trap him. Camila played her role as the loyal fiancé. Together, they wore their lies as perfectly as their designer clothes. But Lily knew lies age badly. Truth waits. And tonight, in the villa lit by chandeliers, Lily stood not as the desperate woman who once begged a judge to believe her. Tonight, she carried 4 undeniable witnesses, not in a briefcase that in her arms, her children. The real verdict had arrived, and Edward was finally cornered in a courtroom he couldn't buy. Camila locked the door behind her. The bridal chamber, once radiant, now felt claustrophobic. Her hands trembled as she turned to face him, the man she had married only hours ago. "Tell me," she demanded, her voice cracking. "Tell me the truth." Edward stood by the dresser, pouring himself a drink with hands that shook more than the glass revealed. His silence was answer enough, but Camila needed to hear it. "Are they yours?" she pressed, stepping closer. "Those children, are they yours?" His back stiffened. No. Camila's eyes burned. "Don't lie." Edward turned slowly. His face was pale, sweating. "They're not supposed to be." Camila felt the floor tilt beneath her. "Not supposed to be?" Edward's mask cracked. His voice was hollow. "She wasn't meant to keep them." Camila's knees weakened. She grabbed the edge of the bedpost to steady herself, her white dress smearing against dust she hadn't noticed before. "You lied to me," she whispered. Edward's jaw flexed. "I did what I had to. You paid them off, didn't you?" She could barely breathe. "The clinic, the lawyer, you buried. The test." He didn't deny it. Camila's stomach twisted. Rage swelled. But it wasn't for Lily. It was for herself. "You let me testify against her," she whispered, more to herself than to him. "I defended you. I ruined my own life for a lie." Edward swallowed. "I needed to win." Camila screamed. Not a word, not a name, just a sound, raw and brutal, that echoed against the stone walls. She ripped the diamond ring from her finger, hurling it across the chamber. It clattered, spinning wildly before falling silent. "I thought I stole you from her." Camila gasped, choking on her own words. "But I was never the wife, was I? I was just easier." Edward didn't argue. Camila collapsed onto the bed, her sobs violent now, her body shaking as her world disintegrated around her. Edward watched her fall apart, and for the first time, he said nothing, because he knew Lily hadn't destroyed Camila. He had. And in the silence, the sound of children's laughter drifted faintly from the courtyard, a sound neither of them could outrun. The music had stopped. The villa's great hall stood silent, save for the soft clicking of Lily's heels on marble. Each step echoed. She carried no expression on her face. In her hands were 4 small boxes, simple, white, tied with thin silver ribbons. All eyes followed her as she crossed the shattered reception floor. Champagne glasses lay toppled, petals crushed underfoot. No one moved. No one dared. Lily reached the wedding cake table. She stood still for a moment, gazing at the towering cake, layers of perfection, delicate frosting untouched, as meaningless as the promises exchanged earlier that night. She placed the first box gently beside the cake, then the second, Then the third. Her hands did not shake. The fourth box she held longer. Her youngest son tugged at her skirt softly. Are we going home? Mommy. Lily looked down. For the first time all night, she smiled. Just faintly. She did not answer. Instead, she knelt and kissed his forehead. Then placed the final box on the table, completing the silent offering. The guests stared at the boxes. What they didn't know, what Edward knew. What Camilla feared, was what those boxes contained. Inside each, a single birth certificate. .4 documents. .4 undeniable truths. Each naming Edward Langston as fathered. No judge. No lawyer. No PR team could bury what sat, wrapped like wedding favors, beside his untouched cake. Camilla stumbled forward. Her gown, dirted now, trailed behind her as she neared the table. She reached for the nearest box, but froze, unable to touch it. Her body collapsed to the floor instead. She sobbed openly now. Loud. Unrestrained, by the cake her hands had once dreamed of cutting beside Edward. Lily watched her for a moment, saying nothing. Her eyes weren't cruel. They were empty. Edward remained motionless. He hadn't spoken since Lily entered the hall. He stood at the far end, breathing shallow, his face ashen. His empire, the empire built on denying his blood, stood shattered around him. Lily rose slowly. She adjusted her children's coats one by one, checking their hands. Their small boxes still clutched tight. Come, she whispered softly to them. They followed. Not a single guest stepped in her way. Lily led her children toward the villa's grand doors. Walking past the broken woman by the cake and the hollow man beside the pillars to the threshold, she paused. She turned once. Her gaze swept the hall, but she said nothing. Her silence was her final verdict. And with that, Lily stepped into the night. Her children followed, their small footsteps fading behind her. Inside, Camilla's sobs rang louder. Edward did not move. He couldn't. He understood. Now he had lost, not to Lily's rage, but to her truth. The headlines were merciless. Billionaire father denied his own children. Wedding scandal. The woman he called a liar returns. Lily Langston breaks silence, without saying a word. Photographers swarmed the villa before dawn. News vans choked the winding roads. Reporters shouted questions at iron gates that would never open again. Drones circled the estate, capturing aerial views of shattered crystal and abandoned champagne towers. But Edward Langston never came outside. He was finished. His board resigned. His investors pulled out. His companies collapsed, not from financial scandal, but from something worse in the public eye: moral failure. A man who denied his own children, who buried truth beneath money. And when the walls of his villa closed in on him, he let them. Camilla vanished. She was last seen 3 days after the wedding, slipping from a private clinic under the cover of night. Rumors swirled. Rehab, psychiatric care, exile. None confirmed. None denied that no one asked her for her version. No one cared anymore. But Lily? Lily Langston became a question. Journalists camped outside apartment blocks. Paparazzi staked out playgrounds. Reporters scoured family courts. But Lily said nothing. No statement, no lawsuit, no interviews. She disappeared into her silence. The same silence that had once condemned her. Now her shield. It wasn't revenge. It was refusal. Freedom, for Lily, wasn't about taking back what Edward stole. It was about leaving it behind. And somewhere, weeks later, a photographer caught the only image the world would see of her again. A park. Nothing extravagant. No designer clothes. No security. Lily walked alone, her black coat simple against the gray morning. Ahead of her, for toddlers played, chasing leaves, shrieking with laughter. Their hands were empty now. No boxes. No burdens. Just children. She sat on a bench, watching them, smiling softly. The photo made the front page. Lily Langston, alone but free, but no one knew the truth behind that smile. It wasn't triumph. It wasn't justice. It was peace, the quiet kind, the rare kind, the kind that needed no audience. And as her children's laughter filled the morning air, unnoticed by those passing by, Lily knew the truth that headlines could never write. Silence had always been her weapon, but now it was her freedom. Lily Langston never said goodbye, not in the courtroom where they called her a liar, not when Camilla testified, not when Edward laughed during his wedding toast. She had no need for farewells. Her silence had always been mistaken for weakness. People assumed she stayed quiet because she was fragile, that she avoided confrontation because she feared defeat. But silence can be strategy, and sometimes silence is the loudest scream. She never demanded an apology. She never chased after Edward when he walked out of their home, accusing her of trapping him. She never begged Camila to explain why friendship could dissolve so easily under the weight of wealth and power. She never fought. She waited. Years passed. She watched her children grow, each carrying the truth written into their faces, a truth she didn't need to prove. She didn't waste words defending herself to a world that chose Edward's charm over her honesty. When she arrived at that villa, for small children trailing behind her, their voices rising in innocent cries of daddy. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't spectacle. It was justice. Not the kind written in court documents or splashed across media headlines, but the quiet kind, the real kind. Justice delivered not by accusation, but by undeniable presence. She didn't arrive with threats. She arrived with proof. And when Edward's empire crumbled, when Camila broke beside her untouched wedding cake, when reporters screamed outside the villa's gates, Lily stood still. She didn't need to explain. The children had spoken for her. In the end, Edward lost not to Lily's fury, but to her silence. He had built his life on lies so carefully crafted that even he had begun to believe them. Until the day those lies collapsed under the weight of 4 small voices. Daddy. That was all it took. Lily never looked back when she left the villa. She didn't need to. She had never come to reclaim a husband or a friend, or even her stolen reputation. She came to reclaim her peace, her life, her children, in a world that thrived on noise, lawsuits, headlines, accusations. Lily had taught them something Edward never understood. Silence can be absolute. Silence can be final. And so Lily Langston, the woman the world once called desperate, walked away without a word, without goodbye, because justice doesn't say goodbye. It simply ends things.